It's one of the most famous aspects of the birth of Jesus also is the arrival of the three wise men. In the tradition, it's also said kings, but Yogananda has told us these are three wise men that came from India. I'll go more into that in a moment. But they said they're following the star in the east, and they're wise men from the east. So they're from the east, and they're following the star in the east, and they're going to Jerusalem. So really, they had to be traveling west. So what do you think the deeper meaning of it is? It's like there's this star, and as they traveled, I mean, was it the early appearance of Halley's Comet or something? And so they're traveling west. The scriptures say that the star was in the east, and they followed the eastern star, and they were from the east, but they had to be traveling west. So is it a fable, or is it a deep spiritual truth that the disciples were trying to convey to us? So further in the Bible, now this is, okay, it's in the Bible, this is for people in the West. Jesus says, "The light of the body is the eye, and therefore thine eye be single, and thy whole body be full of light." And Jesus' apostle John wrote in Revelations, "And they shall see his face, and his name shall be his name shall be in their foreheads, and there shall be no night there, and they need no candle, neither light of the sun, for the Lord God giveth them light." So this inner vision of light comes in the forehead when we're deep in meditation. And also Kadam, it says star of the east, the star of the east, Kadam. In Hebrew, it also means goes before, and it also, throughout the Bible, Kadam means forehead. So even in these Western scriptures, they're talking about light at the spiritual eye. And so the wise men following, they say that the star stood still over the place where the child was. Now, if it's a heavenly body, if it's the moon or the sun or a comet or a star, how could it stand still over the place where the child was? Because we know that if we ourselves move, it looks like the stars move also. It moves over a different house and over a different house and over a different house every time we move. But it held still over the star. So the disciples of Jesus were giving us the meaning that for those who had ears to hear, that these wise men were coming to greet the birth of a high spiritual incarnation, an incarnation from the highest spiritual realms, the birth of an avatar, an incarnation of God. So the spiritual eye, as Master tells us, and as our teachings in yoga describe, is if we dive deep into meditation, we're able to penetrate the higher realms. And so when we meditate, that's why one of Master's most basic teachings that's part of every single technique is that we are gazing up. He said when he was young, he gazed up all the time when he was in Sri Yukteswar's ashram, and it's one of the ways of elevating and uplifting our consciousness. And those of us that meditate, maybe people in this room, but many people who meditate, they may have visions in meditation. They may have a vision of Christ. They may have a vision of Krishna, of Buddha, of light, of different things. And when we meditate, it's possible that light will form into visions, and we will have visions. But those visions are different than the vision of the spiritual eye. The spiritual eye is universal. It doesn't matter if you're a Hindu or a Buddhist or a Christian. It's universal. Just like everybody has two eyes, everybody has a spiritual eye. And even brand new meditators can see the light at the spiritual eye sometimes. And also sometimes people meditating for 50, 60 years, deep, deep devotees may never see it. Just depends on the spiritual karma of each of us, of what kind of spiritual experiences we have. But if you look up here, above the pictures of our gurus is a illustration of the spiritual eye. And in all the Ananda meditation centers and temples around the world, you will find spiritual eye up at the top of the altar. And the spiritual eye, when we see it perfectly, is a blue field surrounded by a golden ring, and in the middle of the blue field is a white star. And in meditation, we can penetrate those lights. It's like layers of consciousness, or the astral world, the causal world, and then into cosmic consciousness. You can see it almost as a tunnel. If you start to see, Swamiji says, if you start to see light at the spiritual eye, always go for the center. Go for the center of it. So it's almost like, you can try to feel like it's a tunnel and you're moving into the center of that tunnel, because if you penetrate the golden aura, the golden aureole, then we're penetrating into the astral world. And if we're able to penetrate further and go deeper and deeper, you start to penetrate the blue tunnel, which is the tunnel of Kutastha Chaitanya, of Christ consciousness. And then if we can still go further into the white star in the middle, we pass beyond creation altogether into cosmic consciousness, to God's presence beyond form. And so this is Master's teachings on the spiritual eye. And you think of the wise men. The wise men, they were following the star of the east, the star in the forehead, the spiritual eye. And the spiritual eye also is a place of great intuitive perception. And so they were intuitively perceiving by following the consciousness that they had in meditation, in the spiritual eye, where they could find the birth of the avatar. And a very interesting part of all of this is that Yogananda told his disciples, and Swami was present, Swami Kriyananda was present when he said it. He said that the three wise men had come from India, and that the three wise men were Babaji, Lahiri Mahashaya, and Swami Sri Yukteswar, different incarnations of these great avatars. And we think, wow, that sort of blows your mind. But when you think of it, think of in the Gita, when Arjuna, Krishna tells Arjuna that, here I've given you this teaching. I'm giving you this teaching of Kriya Yoga. I also, in a previous incarnation, gave it to the ancient sage Manu. And Yogananda says Babaji is an incarnation of Krishna. And you think of the avatars who have manifested on earth as God has come again and again throughout the evolution of this world. And they come for our evolution. And if they've been incarnating again and again, do you think we also have been incarnating again and again? So we've been incarnating with these avatars, with these great masters, again and again. So is it so hard to believe that the great masters that are spiritual family to Christ, who are Babaji, Lahiri, and Sri Yukteswar, that they would not want to come and greet Jesus being born, another avatar being born on the planet? And so it's amazing to contemplate the birth of an avatar. And this is a time when much of the world, all the Christians on the planet, are contemplating the birth of an avatar. And it's a wonderful time. As most of you know, we have this the long meditation honoring the birth of Christ. Next Sunday, it's an 8-hour meditation. Yogananda set up this tradition in 1933, 8-hour meditation. And it's one day of the year that we put aside just to dive deep into contemplating the God on earth. And we can contemplate Krishna and Buddha and Christ and how they fit into our lives. Krishna said in the 4th chapter of the Gita, those who know the truth, touching my birth, touching my births, touching my incarnations on earth, need not incarnate again. He will attain me. And so it behooves us to not only contemplate the birth of the great masters, but also their lives. What happened in their lives? What did they do? What did they say? Look for the divinity within each of them. And as we contemplate their divinity, also we attune ourselves to their consciousness, to their divinity, and we are uplifted in that divinity. So the more and more divine we see in them, the more we see divine in all around us. And what is the difference of their consciousness with our consciousness? They see God in everything. They see God in every atom of creation. That's like the definition of Kutastha Chaitanya, of Christ consciousness. So as we attune ourselves to that consciousness, we begin to see divinity in every moment, in every atom, and we become more and more like them. And of course, that is why they descend, to guide us in this way, so that we can become them. Ramakrishna said, your duty as devotees is to fall down and worship where others only bow. That's our job as devotees. Now, during this time of Christmas, during Janmashtami, during Ramnavami, but also we are all incarnations of God. We are all God's manifestations on earth, so we can honor each other like this as devotees, and we can just uplift our consciousness by attuning ourselves to these inner realities, gazing up at the spiritual eye, try to penetrate into deeper and deeper levels of consciousness. And of course, tune into the consciousness of the masters. They will guide us. God bless you.
The Mahabharata is a very long story with a myriad of symbolic meanings. It's a story of each soul through many lifetimes. And until we finally reach that star in the spiritual eye and penetrate that star into the infinite consciousness. And by comparison, the story of the life of Jesus in the Bible is a very short story. There's some reference to his birth, as Daya said, about wise men seeing a star. There's a story of when he was 12 years old preaching in the temple, and then there's just silence until suddenly he's 30 years old and he's beginning his public mission. And our Guru said that in those 17 years that aren't talked about, that Jesus came to India to reciprocate the visit of the three wise men at his birth, to be with these great masters. And these few words that we have on the life of Jesus are really dense with symbolic meaning, and it's very helpful on our own journey to study some of them. And when we make this journey through the spiritual eye, we need purification. We need tapasya to prepare ourselves for that experience. And God asks us to make that extra effort to move out of our comfort zone. And this story in the Bible of Mary is a young woman who was engaged to be married when an angel came to her and said that she was to be the mother of Jesus. And a short time later, she finds herself rather inconveniently, before her marriage, pregnant. And for cosmic consciousness, for Christ consciousness to be born, we may have to face criticism. We may have to go against the norms of society to stand up to what we know is truth. While she was pregnant, Mary and Joseph made a very long, arduous journey to their own birthplace because there was a census and they had to go there. And for a new consciousness to be born within us, we have to travel back to our origins, back to a point of simplicity. There's no room at the inn when they arrive, Mary and Joseph. And so also this consciousness is not born where we are comfortable, but through tapasya, we have to make that extra effort. There was a saint who visited Ananda village, I remember, and he told us that for the ashram there to be flourishing as much as it was, that it wasn't just the grace of the Guru. He said there was also necessary a great deal of deliberate tapasya to lay the foundation. And Swami Kriyananda, his first desire was a retreat in the country, in the mountains for himself. But then Divine Mother made him postpone those plans. And for many years he had to work to create a retreat for others. He was the one who had to go out and earn money to buy the land, to build the buildings, and to teach classes, to draw people there. And so, likewise, through whatever seva God gives us, wherever He plants us, that is how we must grow. And like the wise men, we make this long journey, this pilgrimage, following the star, the pilgrim's highest path, doing our best to avoid distractions along the way. And when we reach the divine presence, we give gifts. Perhaps not myrrh and frankincense and gold, but we give the gifts of everything that is not yet perfect within ourselves, so that God can make us perfect. Yogananda Ji prayed to God, "Touch me but once, and I will change all my clay into thy gold." And in another sense, the spiritual path is not long at all. We can say that it's less than a meter long, from the base of the spine to the spiritual eye, that is all already within us. And to reach that goal, there must be a deep, lifelong yearning. There must be intense practice of meditation. But then, most importantly, our hearts need to expand, to receive that divine love. And we're extraordinarily blessed in this lifetime that we know that this is the goal of life. We have the guidance of self-realized gurus. And we have the support of Sangha friends who can help us along this pilgrimage. And let's keep reminding ourselves of all of those blessings that we have. We can be walking in the most beautiful forest, and there's a pebble in our shoe, and all of our attention is on the discomfort of the pebble in our shoe. Finally, we stop to take it out, and we realize that it's just so tiny. And so all of our troubles that seem so big are just so tiny compared to this wonderful destiny that is ours, that we want to remind ourselves of more and more. Yoganandaji said, when a baby chicken is inside the egg, its whole world is the egg. It doesn't know any other reality. But when the chick breaks through the shell, it comes into another world. So we are human chicks. We don't know what is beyond. But through the spiritual eye, we see the astral world. There marvelous currents and lights are floating about. Through the two eyes we see the physical world, and through the spiritual eye we can see the astral realms. Thank you.